Welcome to our interview. Our interview is part of a series brought to life by Georg Müller to bring topics of the classical ancient world to life. Kim, do you want to start?
Yes, I'd like to introduce our interview partner. This is Dr. Michael Eisenberg. He got his PhD of archaeology at the University of Haifa in Israel. Since 1999, he has been working at the Zinman Institute of Archaeology at the University of Haifa. Since then, he has been the director of the Susita Hippos excavation project at the university. Furthermore, he's also the director of the Tel Shikmona excavation project beginning in 2010 and a senior lecturer. His main fields of research include military architecture during the Hellenistic and Roman period and the Decapolis. He is also the co-author of the Hippos Susita monograph series 2003 to 2010. We'd like to ask our first question. It is, where did your fascination with archaeology come from and when did it start?
Well, first of all, good to be here. Good to see you again, guys. Sadly, it wasn't personal. A few months ago, I spent 3 months in Delmenhorst in the Advanced Study Institute in the HBK. And so I think we got the right connections in order to cooperate later on. And now I'm sitting at Miflet, not too far away from Haifa in Israel. Speaking of fascination, passion, romance, I would say, in the basic sense of it, in the human sense, for archaeology developed, I think, somewhere in high school, going and locating ancient horse teeth by the Citadel of David in Jerusalem, and then it continued. Now, perhaps the question, how you stay fascinated by something that you're dealing with more than 20 years. So sometimes you get bored because you already know that in 2.3 meters, you will find the next column of the main street of Hippos. And sometimes you get really intrigued, fascinated, and surprised. And I would say surprised would be the main factor here. Physically going, excavating with your own hands, with large tools, pickaxe, putting all your body and sweat into it, and slowly exposing, unearthing a narrative. You see it in sections, you see it in scrums that slowly being inherited as a big picture, a coherent one for yourself. And later on, you like to find a larger picture. You have research questions emerging from this narrative you just found. And I think this is what's so fascinating. The things as an archaeologist that you expose are the first time and the only time they will be exposed. So you have a lifetime experience exposing interesting strata. Sometimes it's dramatic, like skeletons just before they did not manage to escape the collapse of a huge basilica in an earthquake, and you find their possessions with them and so on. Sometimes there are more interesting questions as for the historical regional narrative. What happened exactly when the Muslim forces arriving in the 7th century and conquering the region? How slow or rapid the change of the Christian community? How are they dealing with each other? And sometimes you have those very small surprises that will tell you a whole story.
That's very fascinating what you're talking about. I couldn't imagine how much effort and love you have for archaeology. What can you tell us about Hippos, because it's one of your biggest projects? In what way have the findings of the excavation sites supported and proved assumptions about when and by whom it was founded?
Antiochia Hippos, as the ancient people that founded the city, a polis, about 2 kilometers from the east side of the lake, the Sea of Galilee. Kinneret Lake, depends how you call it, on a flat, small mountain, very high hill, if you would like, geologically. It was protected naturally, and it was named by one of the rulers of the Seleucids. We guess it was Antiochus the Great, because the city is named after Antiochia Hippos. The other option would be Antiochus IV Epiphanes. We don't know. But with time, with the excavations, we reveal more and more information. I wish it was an epigraphy, a huge inscription telling us that the foundation dated to this year and here. I hope so, one day. But in the absence of such epigraphy, we are dependent on very small materials. And Hippos, being one of the largest classical ongoing excavations in Israel in the last 20, 25 years, do give you the accumulation of a lot of data. So imagine exposing a city. You are unearthing a city that no one before you, almost nobody, excavated it. So for better or for worse, you're in charge with your colleagues, of course, of exposing those monuments. And in between, usually you need luck. Okay, pure luck, nothing else. Many times there are good instincts, research, and so on, but rather often in archaeology, it's luck. Because if you don't have it, you will continue excavating an empty hole. If you do have it, suddenly you will find a remarkable, one-of-a-kind mask that nobody found in the world, and so on. So it all depends. And again, we're talking about people back then and now, and they're all connected. Now, luckily for us, we are dealing with classical periods. I mean, we have information, we have history. We know how the city was planned. Hippos is a Roman Eastern city, part of the empire, part of the Syria, Provincia Syria, the large one. So we have a lot of parallels, examples, ideas, how the city is supposed to be planned. Concerning your second question, but how do you know when exactly it was founded? How did it look like during the Hellenistic period? I'm talking about the beginning of the 2nd century BC. We have huge lacunae, and the last 7 years, part of this lacunae were filled, only partly. One of the reasons for that is that we hardly have any historical information about Hippos during the Hellenistic period. So archaeology is being used here as part of this filling up the picture, the larger historical picture, the narrative of the region. It's not only Hippos, it's Hippos and its territorium, the huge area it controls. So the last years, we found more and more information regarding Hellenistic strata, accumulation, building materials, and so on, of the 2nd mainly, and early 1st century that we didn't have a dozen years ago. Together with them, for example, more and more coins of the Seleucids. So we have more information to put it on our scans, on our table, in order to start and debating. If you don't have critical mass of coins, pottery, buildings, and so on, it's very hard to contradict and debate. Now we have at least some ground of debating and comparing ourselves to other rather fresh information and investigations in archaeology that we have in the region. Only 10 years ago, perhaps a bit less, a new fortress of the Ptolemies, for example, was excavated in the Hippos territory, a very short distance to the east, just on the border with Syria nowadays. And back then it was a border as well. It was exactly the border between the Ptolemies, the Ptolemaic dynasty that rules from Alexandria, from Egypt, and controls the land of Israel, and with some buffer zones. And in Syria proper and a bit in Asia Minor, you will have the Antiochians or the Seleucids all the same. And they were fighting all the time. And we have to wait to 199 BC for the decisive battle of Panias, Paneon, not too far from Hippos towards north. It's the northern part of the Golan nowadays. And the Seleucids win. And since this moment, Antiochus the Great III, he starts rather quickly to set up military posts. And after a few years, a bit more, those military posts in many occasions become foundations of a polis. We believe this is exactly what happened at Hippos, and we are gathering more and more information towards exactly this narrative. I think in 20 years we'll be, of course, smarter. 3 years ago only, we've excavated beneath the main square of the Roman city, the Forum. And we believe that we found the first agora in the land of Israel. Now you would say, but every Hellenistic city has an agora. That's correct. But nobody found it yet. So it's a bit more tricky with the Hellenistic finds. It's far more easier with the big Roman, very rigid constructions.
Okay, now I want to talk about the ecology of military architecture, if that's fine to you. And in the pre-discussion, you told us about the difficulties you're facing in this field of archaeology regarding the fact that you rarely find any remnants of things like siege towers or artillery of classical times. So how does military architecture work then? So and what role does remnants of defensive structures, fortifications play in this field of science?
Now that's great. It's one of my passions. Military architecture or polyarchetics of the classical world. And we have a lot of information, mainly from the Hellenistic sources, but of course from the Romans as well, about the military historiography of how cities were fortified. And I use military architecture as the wider concept, the wider definition of all defense systems. And you've shown us now a reconstruction, we have to update it already, a reconstruction of the city of Hippos with the ancient Roman road in the Wadi leading down west to the Sea of Galilee. And you have the curtain wall or the city wall fortifications encompassing all the city on the plateau of Hippos mountain, of the Susita mountain. And then we have a lower wall of fortification reaching the ditch. All those components are named military architecture. Now, for example, we have a remarkable manual of Philon of Byzantium, but he's sitting in the end of the 3rd century in Alexandria under the Ptolemaic rule, and he writes one of the most amazing guides for a general. It's called Polyarchetica, or how to besiege a city and how to defend a city. And I'm rather confident that the Roman generals had the same manual and appreciated it. He's telling us about the ditches that's supposed to pose and hold the huge siege machinery of the besieger, of the forces attacking. So the first thing you do when you arrive to a city, and I'm always saying a city and not a small fort and so on, because the vast majority of efforts, financial ones, were put by the polis itself to protect itself. This is true up to the 1st century Common Era. And I will explain later why it's not true anymore as from the 1st century. So they had at least one wall surrounding the city itself with a series of towers that can be defended from, protecting each tower, protecting the other one, and allowing the projectiles, catapults and ballista alike, to shoot from the towers towards the enemy. So the first thing that you do while coming to a new topography a new setup of a city or settlement like Susita, which is set up on a relatively high hill defended all around from all the areas, there is only one place which is naturally is not defended. And this is the part from the right side, from the southeast. This is a topographic saddle. This is exactly why the main road to the city is upon this saddle. This is the most comfortable way 2,000 years ago and yesterday climbing up towards the main gate to the city on the east side. And this is why you have a beautiful 7 meters wide ditch in the middle of the saddle road, in order to stop or at least pause the huge machinery by the enemy. Now, if you are analyzing the topography, which it did not hardly change back then and now, you understand that the only way for the besieger to bring up his besieging machinery, I'm talking about the Helepolis, moving tower, about the battering rams, tons of wood, sometimes wood and metal as well. It would be only from along the Roman road and then along the saddle. That's why you have a ditch in the middle. And then your way of thinking is, let me put myself in the military boots of a Roman, for example, in the 1st century. What would be the best place for me to set up my heavy machinery, my heavy catapults against the enemy? I just said, he will be coming from here. There is no chance for him coming from the north side. It's too steep. There is no road there. And then using historical photographs from the British Mandate, 1930 something, and doing aerial survey, modern one, and then surveying from the ground, I understood there is a high chance of locating the battery, I call it a bastion, exactly in the middle of the main southern cliff, where the heavy machinery of the defenders will be stationed, shooting on the heavy machinery, of course, of the people and their machines advancing down in the wadi towards the main city. So the main efforts were, like nowadays, tanks against tanks and so on, would be, first of all, let's destroy the heavy machinery. It's slower. We're talking about 3 to 4 stories high towers and so on. And they were using about this size of ballista balls made of basalt. We found about 9 of them, 18.5 kilograms each. If you take the manual of this Philon of Byzantium, he tells you exactly, and other manuals, ancient ones, end of the 3rd century BC, how to build a machine and exactly the ratio between the size of your small finger and the other parts of the machine, how to build it. Sorry about the meows, it's 2 fresh cats. And you know how to calculate by the caliber of the ball, how to calculate the length of the machine, which is exactly 8 meters. And then you excavate this bastion made of basalt at the city itself, and you find a protected hole, actually outside of the cliff on the southern one, with exactly 8 meters long vaulted hole. So that's the excitement. The things stitched up together, and you can take a historical defense manual and try to fit it to your side.
Okay. Can you, like, hypothetical, you're wearing Roman boots as you stated. Would you be impressed as an attacker? Would you be impressed by things like the geographical side? Hippos is located on a high ground, and would you be impressed by the fortifications, like the walls, if you were an attacker in ancient times?
Well, first of all, we found only a small remnant of the fortification walls. We found the hewing of the basalt rock where the wall was, we found segments of walls. I'm talking about 3 to 5 meters long. And we didn't excavate it all, of course. Again, imagine we're excavating only a small part of the city. But speaking of the bastion, yes, we excavated all the 50 meters frame of the bastion. It's 50 on 10 meters. This would be a very impressive protective area. The rest, it would not stand in one line category with, for example, the large cities of Greece, Asia Minor. As part of my study, of course, I go to these places and survey them, analyzing the architecture there. It's 3 times larger, by far better preserved. So the picture that you show us here, this is a proposed, a bit artistic reconstruction of the city. Some of the parts here are totally accurate. The ditch, the saddle, this super interesting lower wall that we only started excavating, the bastion, the main gate, the small gate, and so on. Other parts, of course, we are guessing. Well, could be that it was more sophisticated, but I'm not daring, of course, putting it in a reconstruction, not even a proposed one. So we did not finish investigating it. I'm aware of more segments of fortification wall to the north of the city, and this is the south we are looking at, and they would be very interesting. I wish to expose one day the late Hellenistic or very, very early Roman ones, early 1st century, because still they existed back then. One of the things that's happening, and now you remind me that I promised to say why the 1st century was a changing point. Something very odd happened in the 1st century in the Roman world. If you would ask a Greek citizen during the Hellenistic period even, and you will ask him, do you live in a city with a fortification wall? He would laugh. He would say, is there a city without fortification wall? I don't understand you. It was a must. It's symbolic. And as from the 1st century, we see in North Africa, we see here in Provincia, Syria, we see new foundations, and I emphasize on new, of cities, of polis, without any fortification wall. Why? Is it money? No. They actually have more money now. It's the absence of any risk, the security problems. It's the Pax Romana. It's the great Roman peace that almost encompasses all the empire. Well, almost, and depends when. In our region, we have in 67 the Great Revolt. It's a huge revolt of the Jews in the land of Israel, Judea, and so on, against the Romans. And they put a lot of effort in order to seize this rebellion. And I assume that the bastion in Hippos was built exactly towards and during this occasion. The Jews from the other side of the lake, which was totally Jewish, on the western side, Tiberias, Magdala, and so on, we know from Josephus Flavius that they attack all the region of Hippos. They torch, they destroy, but they cannot attack the defense systems of the city itself. And it's back to your questions. Why? They don't have a proper military training or an army. They are rebels. In order to build one catapult, you have to be a master. Like Vitruvius. Vitruvius was a main officer of the legion. He was in charge of building those machinery, among others. And you have to know how to operate them. For example, we have a beautiful story from the larger siege on Jerusalem by Titus, the Romans, during the Great Revolt. And we know that the Jews are capturing Roman legionaries and forcing them to operate the machinery against their own legionaries, you know? This is how difficult the situation was in such a creation. So we have better examples of fortification, but if to speak about the Decapolis, about this big group, geographical one of Greco-Roman cities that we all aware of, then this is one of the best examples of early Roman military architecture that was preserved and analyzed.
Okay, so you mentioned the Decapolis, and Hippos is as in polis often referred to the Decapolis. Can you tell us something about the way the cities of the Decapolis were connected, apart from the term Decapolis, so meaning 10 cities itself?
Now we have several lists. We have several lists by the historians, if it's Pliny, if it's Josephus Flavius and others, using the term Decapolis and mentioning a list of cities. In some lists, there are 10 cities. In others, you have to go up to 16 and even more. Some cities are out of this geographical block. Basically speaking, we're talking about the region of nowadays Jordan mainly, Syria, and Israel, modern ones. And we have a big block of cities with their territories, with their territorium. Because each city did not control, as you can see here, only the borders of the fortification wall. Everything that you could see in this artistic picture was controlled. The Golan regions, for example, above us, they were controlled by Hippos. It's a huge area. It's another research we're dealing the last 3 years, analyzing this area. So this is taxation. They're in charge of this area with a lot of villages, townships, farms, and so on. Some of them are, of course, are soldiers or veterans of the city itself. We know it by inscriptions. So Hippos is one of the smaller polis of this group. Nisas Kitopolis in Israel, in the Jordan Valley, would be probably the largest, together with Gerasa, Jarash, nowadays a beautiful archaeological site in Jordan. Philadelphia would be far away towards north, and in some lists, it's part of the group. What's make it a group? Because some people use the term Sumachia or military alliance. No. This is a mistake. We have no proof whatsoever that the Decapolis was ever an administrative unit. We don't have a ruler to the Decapolis. We don't have inscriptions of a ruler of it. We don't have coins of the Decapolis. One day, somebody will find an inscription telling us that for 5 years, it was united. I have no problems with it. So far, we didn't. It's not. But they do share something very, very important. Most of them share foundation stories, mythological ones, and chronological ones going back to the Hellenistic period. All of them are sharing the Greco-Roman culture and, of course, language. They know each other. They share territorial borders with each other. And they are stability anchors for the Hellenistic monarchy and later for the imperium, for the Roman one. Because there you have the citizens, there you have the aristocracy. All the money is concentrated there. Each city has a few thousands of people, depends how large it is, and so on. But many of the villages around the city, they see themselves as part of the city. They don't live there, but they are part of the thing that is called Antiochia Hippos. And how do we know? They write it on their tombstones. They are proud of it.
Are there any archaeology evidences, and similarities in Hippos you found, so that Hippos is marked as a city of the Decapolis? Some similarities from
other cities?
Could you tell a difference from Hippos excavations to, let's say, Ephesus or Antiochia?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned huge cities, of course, capitals.
Yeah,
So
okay.
this would be a contrast. We're talking about a small provincial polis. Okay, this is not the center of the universe.
Yeah,
And the
okay.
Sea
That's
of Galilee was not the center of the universe as well, despite many of my colleagues that like mentioning it like it was. It's not. It's a nice lake, good agriculture, fertile lands. We have olive plantations and wine and so on and so on. But they're much larger cities. Nissos Kitopolis, for example, in the Jordan River, not too far away. She's huge. Okay, but we're talking about cities with a status of a colonia, much important ones. Cities that can mint silver coins and so on. So each city have differences and similarities. As an archaeologist, well, as an historian, I can of course talk about it as well, which would have a lot of comparison and similarities. As an archaeologist, you're trying always to look for the uniqueness. It goes from the bastion. There's only one here. But then I'm going straight to the next city, to the southeast of Hippos, which shares the longest border with it nowadays in Jordan, Gadara. And I have very good German colleagues that excavate in the region of Gadara. And this is, of course, always our first comparison, because we can learn from each other. Not only learning from each other, import, export, local one, not around the sea. We are checking if pottery arrived to Hippos villages, to the Jewish villages in Hippos. Did it came from the Sea of Galilee on the western part of it, where we have large workshops of pottery? Or some of it, did it came from the pottery workshops in Gadara next to us? Does ethnicity plays a vital role here? And the answer is no. Everything that we thought before the study about logics, economics, and so on, nothing worked. All the evidence were different, and in some places more complex. Depends on the period within the Roman period itself. But this is exactly how you know where being copies made. You have very popular Jewish workshops for pottery in the Galilee. And they're well known, even historically. And then you see pots that look totally the same. But an expert will tell you, no, 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 no. You see these 2 small millimeters? It's not a fake, it's a copy. They were doing exactly the same, but in other places. So using all kinds of techniques, petrography, chemical analysis, and so on, we are, of course, analyzing it and learning who bought from whom and when. How many coins from the Hippos mint, for example, you will find them in Gadara and the other way around. So this would be the similarities, connections. Agriculture, 99% of the income was agriculture. Okay, some fishing in the Sea of Galilee, but there's always agriculture. So this is, of course, the anomalies that you will look for. Recently, we started again looking at the 2 harbors of Hippos on the Sea of Galilee. Not every city, most of the ones in the Decapolis, they don't have any body of water large enough next to them for fishing. You have some large rivers and so on. They are not by the shore. They're totally different from the cities by the shore. So this is another example of uniqueness that you will find here and how it's connected to Gadara. Gadara, the neighbor, the large sister, she needs sometimes transport or fishing. Did she have a harbor or not next to the territorium of Hippos? And this is something we've been dealing just a year ago, okay? We don't have a definite answer, for example, but we have enough data to say we think, no, this is the region of Hippos, and probably Gadara was using one of the harbors to the south of the Sea of Galilee. And this is how we progress in archaeology. Sometimes the finds are totally random. One day somebody will find a border stone and it will tell us, guys, you've been looking for it 25 years, but this is the border stone. This is exactly the border between in the north part, Hippos, and the Golan, and the Golanites, and so on. So you have to be lucky as well.
You already talked about some techniques. What archaeological methods are used at the excavation in Hippos, and in what way do they differ from other excavation sites?
Well, I don't think they much differ. If you're talking about the classical periods, vast majority will be more or less the same. Okay, we're going to use different software. It's not a big deal here and so on, but it's more or less the same. And there is a good reason for it. It would be rather easy for classical European archaeologists to arrive to Hippos and excavate with us, and the vice versa, or go to Turkey, Asia Minor, and conduct excavations. Sometimes new techniques take longer time, and sometimes it's just a preference. For example, my personal preference the last 3-4 years would be to document everything via photogrammetry. As I'm a photographer as well, it's easier. So rapidly we're moving, of course, towards aerial photographs. And with aerial photographs, we stopped actually hiring small airplanes or choppers. It was fun, but sadly we stopped it because now we have a more efficient way to do it with drones. It's pennies. The quality is good. It's not excellent, but it's good. And it allows us very easily to document large areas as well as tiny areas of few centimeters with the accuracy of 1 centimeter. And 1 centimeter in archaeology is more than enough. It allows us the post-processing of it. It puts back the responsibility towards the archaeologist and not on the architect, on a draft person. So many of the responsibility goes back to us, and I like it. So there are mainly pluses to it. There are a few, of course, faults to this technique. It's getting better all the time. And still, speaking of techniques, I just spoke this week with my colleague. We said we're taking more than 100 years old Schumacher, a genius railroad engineer, German-American one, living in Haifa in the German colony, and we use his information about Hippos. He was the first one to write about Hippos, about the Jaulan and so on. And you see the documentation without photography back then. It's amazing how accurate and good it is. You're going to the very first years of the 20th century, photography already was introduced. You have huge volumes of all Syria by the American, again, genius archaeologist Butler. And we don't usually reach this quality nowadays. And it was only 2-3 persons who dealt with it. So it's not only a progress, there is a regression as well. And it depends how we use, of course, those documentation techniques and how we understand them.
So one can say photography is the most liked archaeology method for you, so you couldn't live without it. Would you say that?
I would say that's exactly, yeah. It's not only basic photography. There are high techniques with it. It's RTI, it's photogrammetry, it's playing with shades. So there is a bit sub-techniques that, of course, following it. It goes to polygons. You can document small finds. It's not only in the field. You can protect them. It's part of heritage. You can, if you want, 3D print them in a printer using this technique. This is the basic pattern for it, and so on. And of course, you're using the regular, measuring devices and so on, and scientific methods. For example, palynology, the ancient pollen of flowers. So we are drilling and using it. But again, each technique should be dealt. They're not being dealt by us. We're just cooperating with our colleagues. 1 hour, okay, that's more amusing. 1 hour ago, exactly, I was mailing a new colleague from another university in Israel, following his article about the genetics of early wine grapes in the land of Israel, and so on, new investigations. I said, well, first of all, wine is always good. But secondly, my intriguing question while writing about the basilica at Hippos, one of the ornaments there of the basilica, again, imagine it's exactly 9 meters from floor level on the upper part of a Corinthian capital, made of basalt and with stucco on it. And they have this size of an ornament around the upper part of the abacus of the capital. And one of them is not of a flower, is a leaf. The leaf looks like grapevine leaf. So I'm asking myself, is it an imaginary, abstract, a catalog perhaps, leaf that the artisan was using? Or is there a chance I can identify it with a real grape? So I started checking. I'm not a big expert, perhaps a bit more in drinking, but not on the form of the wine grapes. So you start dealing with it. And an hour ago, I found another article. I said, okay, come on. One of your two ancient DNA genetics grapes that you found looks exactly like the leaf I was looking for. He said, yes. And even we still find those around Hippos. It doesn't say this is the right leaf. Okay, we have to be more cautious. But this is just an example of other experts. Sometimes it's amusing that we're dealing with, of course, with fauna, flora. Archaeology would be very important, ethnically as well. We are comparing now the finds from different complexes at Hippos, mainly from two dumps. The best place for archaeologists, except for earthquakes, to excavate would be the gutters, a dump where people dropped everything. This is an oasis of information. So we have at least two of such points with a lot of Roman period material. So for example, you see that at Hippos in the Roman period, in the late Byzantine period, in the Islamic period, there are still Christians in the Islamic period here at Hippos. They eat a lot of pigs. You find the butchery of pigs. You go at a distance of 20 kilometers towards northeast. There is a Jewish village. There isn't even one bone of a pig. Okay, just for example. But not only that, this is the simple one. The butchering is totally different. They're using large axes, small axes, knives, and so on. So here you have the more interesting part of ethnicity. And it goes to architecture as well. Suddenly we understand that a sarcophagus that we found, its typology is identical to sarcophagi found on the western side, pure Jewish towns. They were both using the same workshop. Everything is fine. So that's how it goes sometimes. Or our new project of probing basalt, which is the most interesting one and new, the chemical analysis of basalt. And it will give us remarkable results about the differentiation of the quarries and the artisans in the Roman period. But it's only the beginning of the research.
So at the beginning, you told us about, I guess it was some kind of 3D model that you could showcase. Maybe that's interesting for viewers. Do you want to show it? And
I would gladly, but I'm still disabled. You'll have to reshare me.
Yeah, sure. I will give you the rights you need.
Hey. Great, looks promising. So let's go first to the general model. It was made with a drone. As you can see, it allows us to measure accurately, for example, segments. And we are looking, okay, this would be nicer. This is Susita Mountain. Hippos as a city encompassed all around the basalt cliffs here. was built on this plateau. A main street called the Decumanus Maximus crosses the street from the main gate on the east towards a smaller gate somewhere here on the western side. And the software will allow you, of course, very accurately telling you the measurements, volume, whatever you want to know. Now, if you're a passerby and you're coming from the wadi here along the Roman road, ignore the modern one, you will reach exactly this point. And this is the parking lot, the modern one. But this was exactly the point and the junction between the Roman road leading to proper Syria. Or if you turn left, you will go along the Saddle Ridge. You remember the ditch that we've seen? Well, this is the ditch. And you have a ditch here of about, this is 9, it's improper, let's take it from here, about 8 meters wide from one point to the other. And the ditch begins exactly where the field of sarcophagi ends. So it will give you exactly the limits, the border between the necropolis, the city of the dead, and the polis, the city of the living. And you climb up to the city, and you're reaching the main gate. This is the main gate of the city here, okay? A round tower, and some of the remnants of the square of the tower itself. And you will continue walking, and this is the Decumanus Maximus. This is the genuine pavers of basalt. We didn't touch them, we just exposed them. It's about 2 meters high, 1 meter high of accumulation above them. And this is the main street with flagstones all around, up to the main square of the city. And in the main square of the city, you will see a temple for the cult of the emperors. And if you will turn right, you will see the largest building in every city, almost in every Roman city, would be the civic basilica. Look at this structure. From one side of the cliff here up to the entrance here, it's about 50, no, it's 56. It's too large here. It's from here to here, okay, on 30 meters. And you can imagine, of course, those columns standing and erecting a roof of about 17 meters high. A person standing in Tiberias on the other side of the lake would be able to see this structure. Or if it's the temenos, and so on, and so on, and so on. So this is photogrammetry. Apropos, we were talking about the fortification. Some fortifications you can see here. This is the wall. It's not Roman, most of it. It's Byzantine. It survived, but it's Byzantine. The bastion is the most interesting one. And this is this frame here. From one point to the other, 50 meters, about 10 meters from here to here. And later on, when people don't need any more fortifications, the Great Revolt was done with. In the end of the 1st century, beginning of the 2nd century, some of the fortifications of those cities in the region are being neglected. Many of them is being reused as other public spaces. In the case of the bastion, it's perfect. Now it's turned into a bathhouse. This is the southern bathhouse at Hippos. All this huge complex, about 60% of it being excavated. And so on, and so on, and so on. So I will cease the sharing. You can have it back.
Okay, thank you. So what came to mind if I saw this fortifications? Are there any research? Is there any research conducted on how many soldiers or militiamen you would need to defend Hippos properly?
Yes, but we didn't do it with Hippos because Hippos is not a military post. Yeah. It's an autonomous city. That's why the first question would be, why would Roman legionaries, soldiers who come from Syria and build a bastion by the pure Roman military techniques in an independent autonomous city? So my answer would be, it must have happened in a very turmoil situation, in a very dangerous situation. Then you date it, of course. We are excavating the foundations of the bastion. We did not find enough coins. The pottery that we have from all around allow us to say it was built in the 1st century or early 2nd century, not later. So you have a chronological frame. What happened in the region in the 2nd century that could have endangered Hippos? Actually nothing. So we're going back to the 1st century. And then we find something that's strengthening this theory. I cannot prove it. I can only strengthen it. How? On the back wall of the bastion, on the Roman wall, on the Roman cement, opus cementicum, it's a Latin word, sorry. We found 4 imprints of the Roman caligae. One of them is a perfect size. I have a copy in the other room with 42 hobnails, like dogs and cats that leaving their paws on a fresh cement before it dried. This is exactly what happened with those soldiers. So it's not one soldier. There's at least 4, okay, working here and leaving their prints. So that's why I say most probably those were soldiers who built it. And I guess it happened with correlation with the very dangerous situation of the 66, 67 revolt in the Galilee when they built it.
Okay. Yeah. Now we come to the end. Dear Michael, thank you so much for your time and your amazing insights about your work. I'm very fascinated about that. Yeah. Okay.
But you mean fascinated. You have to sweat. If you don't sweat and work with us, it's no fun. So next July, we have another season, July 2024. It's an international expedition. The lingua franca will be English. And you can look up in our website. I guess we will update the next season in about 1 month's time. Feel free to join.
Thank you for the invitation. And I guess if we and the team of Georg Müller will upload the video on YouTube, we will link you and your work. You have a website and other things. So the viewer can conduct further research on this topic.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Frederic.
Thank you. So
thank you very much.